Twice a year I perform an inspection on a car, and I suggest you do the same, especially just before summer comes or just before winter comes. Now we're in the northern hemisphere and winter's about to come, so these are the things that I check right before winter comes to keep the car in good operating conditions. Let's dive right in. One of the things you're going to look at is your tire pressure. Now on a tire itself, it gives you max load operating pressures. But these tires can be mounted on a number of different cars. So what you're going to look at is right here. Let me show you. Some cars will give you the pressure for the tires right in the fuel cap door, in the fuel door. And the pressures vary based on what the loads on the vehicles are. And if you don't have the tag for what your pressures are, oftentimes manufacturer will put a tag right inside the driver door. In this case right here, you will also find what the tire pressure is supposed to be if you're just one passenger or two passenger, or you're driving with a full car. Now, mind you, when it comes to tire pressure, even though your tires may be leak-free, they're still subject to pressure differential based on ambient temperatures. When you go from cold to hot, your tire pressure goes up during the summertime, and vice versa is also true. When you go from summer to winter, you might have a little bit too much pressure in the tires, and you might have to take some air out. And the important thing about this, it affects your tire wear pattern. If you have too much air in the tires, the middle of the tire will wear out faster than the outboard, the outside of the tire, whereas if you don't have enough pressure in the tires, the outside of the tire will wear out faster than the middle of the tire. Hence the reason why checking your tire pressure is important. Next thing you'll want to check is your lights. Make sure your low beams are working, your high beams are working, your fog lights are working, and so are your blinker lights are working as well. Besides checking your low beams and high beams and blinkers, you also want to make sure that all four lights work by activating your hazards. Same thing you'll want to do in the rear of the car. Make sure that your stop lights work. Which ones are your stop lights? Are those very same lights that you'll see when you're driving along the freeway and the highway patrol is right there and they have their headlights out, but all the other lights are on. Those are your stop lights. And you'll do so through the switch that all cars have on the inside. Your lights are on, but your headlights are not on. Again, make sure your stop lights are working, your brake lights are working, your blinkers are working, and you also make sure that your reverse lights are working. The next light you'll want to check is your license plate lights. Make sure that the both one, or usually there is two lights. Make sure that both of your lights are working. And besides, don't give police officers a reason to pull you over. Also, don't forget your third light. Some cars have a third brake light nowadays, especially the modern ones. Some of them have it on top, whether it be a single unit or a strip, or some of them have it on the bottom. But most cars today have a third brake light, so make sure that one is working as well. Under the hood, we're going to check a number of things. One of the most important ones, well, they're all important, really, guys. Oil. Make sure that the oil is in operating range. Transmission oil. Some cars have a dipstick, some don't. You might have to buy a dipstick for it. This one has a dipstick tube, but it doesn't come with a dipstick. I had to buy it separately. So the way you change you check the transmission fluid, make sure your car is nice and toasty, is in good operating temperatures, and that's when you change. That's when you check your transmission fluid, because being that it's in a hydraulic fluid, it does expand and contract based on operating temperatures. So make sure your car is nice and warm, and that's when you check your transmission fluid. If you don't have a dipstick and you don't have or it means to check it from the outside, see if your car has an onboard computer system that allows you to check with your transmission fluid level. Otherwise, just get under the car and make sure that the transmission assembly is dry. If it's wet or it looks like it's leaking, you may have a problem, so bring it in to get it checked. Going back to the engine oil. If you have an oil pan, you check the car with the engine off. If you have a dry sump system, you check the oil with the engine on and at operating condition or operating temperature, just like you do with the transmission fluid. Next thing we check is the coolant. Some cars have an outside tank. It has an expansion chamber such as this one, or reservoir chamber, and you check the coolant level through the tank. Others, older-fashioned cars, they have a cap, and you just open the cap, make sure that the radiator is full. Next thing we look at is your windshield washer fluid. Make sure you get a windshield washer fluid that, if it's winter, that it will not freeze on you when it reaches a freezing temperature below 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius, that it still remains fluid. Do not mix it with water, just use the concentrate, and you'll be able to buy that at your local hardware store, auto parts store, grocery store. They usually have, or even gas stations, they usually have the windshield washer fluid. Next thing you're going to check is your brake fluid level. Make sure that your brake fluid level is in good quantity. If it's starting to run low, that means you may have a brake problem, so get that checked. One other thing you're going to check is your power steering fluid. Usually, oftentimes, most cars have a reservoir, and you check that as a dipstick, just like the engine oil does or the transmission fluid does. And as far as I can tell, guys, we pretty much covered everything under the hood. So we talked about engine, transmission, coolant, brake, washer fluid, and if at all possible, changing your air filter. Change your air filter at least once a year to make sure you have proper good air circulation and your engine breathes properly. Make sure your horns work. Yes, your horns. I don't really use the horns because I'm not one to create anxiety when I'm driving. But, you know, once in a while, press on that horn on your steering wheel. Make sure that they work just in case you need them. You never know. Windshield wipers. Change them once a year. Do them in the fall season before winter comes. That's when you'll need them the most. Whereas if you change them before summer, it's not really going to rain most often places during the summertime, and they're just going to dry out and not work effectively when you will need them in the fall and winter. Some cars also have one in the rear, so don't forget to change the one in the rear also when you change the one in the front. And that is it, guys. Hope this video is of help to you. Again, fluids under the hood, on engine, transmission, power steering, coolant, washer fluid, brake fluid. Wipers front and back, change them once a year, especially in the fall before rains and snow comes. Tire pressure, check them at least twice a year if you have 0 leaks. Otherwise, you should be checking them every month. All your lights, high beams, low beams, fog lights, blinkers, hazards, and in the back, your brake lights, stop lights, reverse lights, blinkers, and your third brake light, and your license plate lights as well. Don't give police reasons to pull you over. Hope this video is of help to you. We'll see you at the next one. Take care.